gentlemen, today I have something very special for you. Today we are sitting down with the original ECW hardcore chair swinging freak, Axel Rotten. How's it going, man?
What's up,
How you
Payne?
doing?
Hey, man, it's great to be here, Payne. I'll tell you what, after a few days of us trying to set this up, I'm glad to finally be in connection one-on-one with you. So this is a first. I want all the wrestling fans out there, all your game fans, everyone to know that I've been involved in pro wrestling since I was 16 years old, and I've seen everything come and go, and this is the absolute first time Axel Rotten has conducted a live interview on YouTube via Skype. So this is a history-making event, Payne, and you are the man to do it.
Well, I thank you very much, man. I greatly appreciate it very much. All right, well, we'll go ahead and jump right off into this.
You reached out to me, man, and I was like, well, you know, I've done a million shoot interviews. What do I have to talk about, really? What am I going to do? And I said, you know, there's always something to say. So, you know, we'll see how this thing goes, and let's rock it, man.
There's plenty of questions I got to ask, man. I've been a major wrestling fan since I can remember. You know, my dad was into wrestling, so that's how I got into it. But I want to start off by asking, how was your health, man? I know you had some health issues in the past. If you care to elaborate and everything and just speak upon that, and how are you doing nowadays?
Yeah, man, it's no secret that I've had issues. I mean, the 800-pound elephant in the room is, you know, the addiction problem with drugs and stuff. That's under control. I'm perfectly fine. I'm sober. Been sober for quite some time. But the thing with that is that's an ongoing thing where you practice that every day. It's like, you know, the addiction is a disease. You treat it, you're never cured. And right now, it's like if I were a cancer patient, I'd be in remission. I'm great. I feel great. See me, I look great. Everything's fine. The Bell's palsy issue. For those of you that saw like the Barbed Wire City documentary, that when they interview me, the late interviews toward the end when I can hardly talk, that is when the Bell's palsy just struck me. Literally, the day before that show, the Extreme Reunion in Philadelphia, I just woke up in the morning and like this side of my face was paralyzed. I couldn't close my eyes. I couldn't do anything. I was like, my eyes were left open. I couldn't move my mouth. It was really scary, you know, to wake up to know I had to go to perform in front of a couple thousand people, and I'm going to look like a monster. But I'm not going to let my fans down. When I went to the emergency room, I said to them, what is this? You know, and they did neurological exams. They did all the things they could think of, and the tests, the CTs and the scans, and they said, basically, you have Bell's palsy. And being a wrestling fan, Jim Ross has Bell's palsy. So I was familiar with what that was. And I said, the $100,000 question is, I have to get in the ring and wrestle tonight. Can I do that? They said, go right ahead. Now, being the vain person that I am, I always think I'm good looking, even though I'm ugly as hell right now. Whoops, lost you, Payne. Sorry about that.
It's all good, bro.
That's me. That's me. In my advanced video equipment, brother. Talked about that before we went on the air. For those of you that don't know, I'm using a cheap camera right now because I broke my other one. So this is an experiment. So stick with me, and hopefully it'll work out well. Can you still see me all right?
Yeah, man, you're looking good now. As long as that string don't, or whatever that was, get back on camera. You're good, bro. Go ahead.
Basically, long story short, I'm doing well. The only thing that I want to do on a personal note is when I was in a car accident, I had tooth knocked out, and I physically, for my own vain appearance, I want to get my teeth fixed, and then from there, get back in the gym and lose some weight because, you know, I had a fractured ankle and some broken ribs, I wasn't able to move that much, so I gained about 50 pounds, and I really don't feel healthy at this weight. I would like to drop about 80 pounds. I would like to get down to about 230, and then I will feel happy again. But I've never been at 230 my entire career. The lowest I ever got was 247, and that was in 1995. So I'd like to go a little lower than that. But health-wise, I'm fine. I feel great. And everything's a go. Everything just keeps getting better. Clean and sober. The speech is better. The Bell's palsy's going away. I can see with both eyes. I can close them. I can open them. So Axel Rotten is on his way back. I don't know if I'm on my way back to an in-ring full-time wrestling career, but I'm on my way back as a person to be what I want to be, which is healthy, happy, and free.
Yeah, man. All right, well, that's good, bro. That's good. Well, let's go ahead and go back to the beginning. Can you remember, like, when your first memories of wrestling? How did you actually, like, started becoming a fan of wrestling?
Sure, brother. That's the only brother you're going to get. That's the obligatory, wrestling, you always have to throw that in. I grew up on Northeastern WWF, World Wrestling Federation. So my first memories of wrestling were of Superstar Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes. Because I live in Baltimore, and the thing with that is I'm right on the cusp of the Mid-Atlantic territory as well as the WWF. So as a kid, WWF was all I saw, Ivan Putski, Andre the Giant, Pedro Morales. And then all of a sudden, as I got a little older, these guys started creeping in, like Ric Flair, and because they started showing up on this real high UHF station, it just said wrestling, and I was like, well, I don't care what it is, as long as it's wrestling, I'm going to watch it. But to be honest, I knew, I was an early starter. I said this before, and just keeping true to the story, at 4 years old, I used to watch WWF wrestling with my grandfather. It came on at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoons. And I told him at 4 or 5 years old, I said, Pat, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to do. We were watching the build-up between Superstar Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes for a bull rope match in Madison Square Garden. And people, if you watch me wrestle, there's a distinct correlation between my style and Dusty Rhodes, because look at the way that I'm made. I look like I was never a bodybuilder, but I can go out there and wrestle, and that's why I was drawn to Dusty, not to mention the charismatic gift of gab, which I was lucky enough to be blessed with too, and Superstar Billy Graham's charisma, because I always thought that you had to entertain the people, you had to draw them in, and especially now, well, back then you had to do what we call talk them into the building, which meant by my promo, from here to there, I'm going to make you want to buy a ticket. So I learned from those guys the art of getting people into an arena, and that's why it just stuck with me, the idea of being able to be an athlete as well as theatrical and over the top, because my favorite band is Kiss, of course, if you can see that. And everyone knows they're bombastic with bombs and explosions and confetti, so everything's over the top. So I thought, how can I fuse these two things together? And, between Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Dusty Rhodes, Superstar Billy Graham, Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, put that all together, and you get Axel Rotten. That's where it all came from.
Bro. You spoke about Dusty Rhodes. I know you did some impressions. Would you mind giving us one, bro? If you can.
Let me tell you something, Payne. The problem is out here today, the jobs in America, they're going across the way. That's hard times, Jack. When a man works 25 years in an office and they tell him, here's the gold watch, kick him out the door. He don't got nowhere else to work. That's hard times, baby. And Ric Flair coming to the Starcade when that American Dream gets you in the ring. Woo! That's going to be hard times all over you, baby. That's a little tough.
That was awesome, man. I love it, bro. I love that.
Dusty, when I met Dusty when I went to WCW in '91, and he called me into his office. It was a surreal experience. He said,
"Yeah, was he the same person you imagined? Once you actually finally got to meet him?"
Yes, it was because he was just sitting back in the office, ball cap on. Nick Patrick said, "Hey, Dusty wants to see you in his office," and I was like, "Oh God, here I go." I got this tryout with WCW, and I was either going to get hired or fired, and I walk in, there's Tony Schiavone standing there, and Dusty's just sitting on a desk with his feet up on the desk with the skull or whatever, and he goes, "That was good. You remind me of a younger Dusty Rhodes." He goes, "We can do some business." And that was it. That's all he said to me. And out of that, I got a little, 2-month run in WCW, because what happened was they had fired the one-man gang, and they needed someone to wrestle PN News on the road. So they brought me in real quick. I did 2 TV matches where I beat 2 guys on TV, and then they sent me right out on the road just to fill in for the one-man gang. But I had a great time, learning. I mean, I was 19 years old, I think. So, I mean, I had gone from wrestling in front of 100 people in a high school gym to wrestling in the Omni in the Greensboro Coliseum the very next month. So it was incredible.
Yes. How did you actually get into wrestling? Of course, who trained you and everything, and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Man. I would like to get off into that.
The way it began was, I was aware of wrestling since I was young because that's what I wanted to do, and a friend of mine named Dave McAllister, who refereed here in the Mid-Atlantic as Dave the Wave, he came. He and I were trying to figure out how to get into anything to do with wrestling. We would buy every magazine. We would we would do all kind of travel anywhere to buy tickets to go to wrestling. And we heard a rumor that there was a boxing gym in Baltimore, but it was in a real kind of seedy neighborhood. And we were like, they said, "Hey, there's guys that after the boxers are done at nighttime, they go in there and they do pro wrestling." And I was like, I had just turned 16, so I just got my driver's license. So I went to pick Dave up, and I said, "Okay, dude, let's go to this place." And it was called the Health and Exercise Palace. Now, that's a very nice name, right, Payne? The Health and Exercise Palace.
Yeah, man.
It was located in a neighborhood where, I mean, it was crack dealers, crackheads, prostitutes. Crime was all over the place. But this was a city-run building, so, I mean, I guess that's the place they could get funded for. That's the place they had. So we go walking in, and lo and behold, we go up the steps. They have to buzz us in. There's, all this weight and all this equipment, and in the back, all we hear is bang, bang, bang. So what the hell, man, because we couldn't see the ring. We open another door, go back, and voila, there's this ring. But we didn't know that it was a boxing ring. It had 4 ropes. And if you know the difference between wrestling and boxing, a boxing ring has to stay firm. Yeah. A wrestling ring has give. So when you take a bump, it absorbs the shock. Well, this ring had a pole right in the middle. It didn't absorb any shock. So you took your fall, it was like falling on a concrete floor. So we were watching these guys wrestle. You wouldn't have heard of any of them. You wouldn't know who they were anyway. But the 2 guys that trained me, I'm sure if you're a wrestling fan, if you watch WCW, you've heard of at some point in time in your life, Jumpin' Joey Maggs or Joey Maggs. He used to get beat up all the time on WCW back in the early 90s. He was the one that trained me along with the guy named Bad Boy Ricky Lawless, who his real name was Jim Leon. And those guys took me under their wing only after making me go to the gym to the wrestling school every day, show up, and just sit there for 2 weeks and do nothing. Just sit there and watch. And then about the second weekend, they said, "All right, kid, get in the ring." And then they just beat the hell out of me for the next 2 weeks. They didn't teach me anything. They just used me as a human stunt man. They would say lay in the middle of the ring, and then they would all drop elbows on me and jump on me and kick me, chop me in the chest, put me in holds, stretch me. And so about a month after that, the day comes, I show up, pardon me, "Hey, get in the ring." I'm like, "Oh, here we go again. I'm getting ready to get my ass kicked." And then out of nowhere, they just started teaching me, and I was like, "Wait a minute, you guys aren't going to beat..." I didn't say this to them, but I said it to myself, because I heard them say to the other students who were ahead of me, You got to learn the first 2 rules of the wrestling business. Rule number 1, keep your mouth shut. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. And if you get past that, then you'll learn more. So I didn't say anything about, hey, why aren't you kicking my ass? Because then I'd be like, hey, I'm looking for an ass kicking. But basically, they just started teaching me. And I from that day on, I showed up every fucking day, and trained for 3 hours. And, months later, once I was able to wrestle a little bit, Jim said to me, he goes, we thought for sure that we would break you because, here you are, this 16-year-old kid who just, comes in and says, I want to be a pro wrestler. And we didn't think you had it in you. We didn't think that you would do it. And once you kept showing up every day before you got to wrestle, because then I'd have to clean the gym after they got finished, tighten up the ropes, sweep up, never got in the ring. And then when I finally got in the ring, I got beat up. Then after getting beat up, I actually learned how to wrestle. So it's not done that way anymore, unfortunately. That's why my generation and the real workers call it, you were broke into the business. You were broke in. You weren't just given a pass because you won a contest or because you were able to
say, so what are your thoughts on that? Obviously, it's not,
like
but like
the
tough enough competition and shit like that.
I think it's funny television, but I also think if a guy like The Miz showed up at my wrestling school, he would have lasted a day and would have never made it. Now, that's not to say he doesn't deserve to be in the business, and I'm not picking on the Miz at all.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, what we are right now is, we are at a very crucial time in the wrestling business, because there's this constant struggle of the old guard and the new generation, but the problem with the new generation is, they're not learning traditional classic professional wrestling. They're learning how to perform a television show. They're not learning how to work in front of a live audience. They're not learning how to perform and bring that energy into a live audience when there's not television cameras. The athletes of today are tremendous. Their characters are great. Some aren't so great. But they're not learning how to what we call work. They're learning how to be entertainers on television. See, because I wrestled, like when I was in Memphis, WCW, every night of the week in a live arena in a different city. There were no TV cameras. These house shows we did, that's where your money was. Nowadays, wrestling is a television show, and you perform for the television camera. So the art of working and what I referenced earlier of talking people into the building is gone now, because wrestling isn't what it was, where when you turned on wrestling, you saw the superstars, say Axl Rotten wrestled Joe Smith. I would beat the hell out of Joe Smith, but knowing that I was wrestling Tommy Dreamer in a month. Tommy Dreamer and Axl Rotten would never touch on television. Do you know why that was, Pain? Do you know why?
To sell tickets, man.
Exactly.
It's all about putting asses in seats.
As long as there's an ass every 18 inches, we're making money. So what would happen is that the stars would always beat up the enhancement talent and never touch each other, but always talk about each other, and then you'd have to buy a ticket to see it. That's how wrestling made its money. Now wrestling's money is made on pay-per-view and television. It's not so much a live entity as it once was. There's still live shows, but that's not the backbone of the business anymore.
I say, coming from a fan's perspective, whoa, lost the camera again. All right, I see you. But coming from a fan's perspective, like back in the day when Taz and Sabu didn't touch for a year, then they finally got into the ring. They would never be able to do that nowadays. Like they can't. They don't do that nowadays. It's go. And yeah, when they finally touched back in the day, it was such an explosion to put asses in seats. That's what it's about.
Exactly. That's the thing, and it's changed. And I'm not completely opposed to the new way of doing business. But I also think that there's a way that we can have a happy medium because we still need those live events because wrestling is a grassroots spectator sport. Once you take the energy and the electricity out of the crowd between the interaction and the entertainer, the wrestler in the ring and the crowd and the people, nowadays, wrestling as a product, the people are a prop. They're part of the show. That's not how it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be an electric, interactive energy force, not a set. You know, like if you go to a movie set, well, wrestling now, the ring is in the middle and the set is the arena, and that's kind of the lost art. I think there's going to be some, God willing, resurgence of grassroots live wrestling, and somehow we can meld the two. I think there's a hybrid out there that someday will form that will make everyone happy. I mean, the old school guys and the younger generation. The reality is, I'm not just saying this because I know how to work and was classically trained. I can convert myself to be a sports entertainer, but I don't think a sports entertainer can convert themselves to be a grassroots 7-night-a-week pro wrestler. I don't think it's possible.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, well, I guess let's go ahead and how'd you actually? Awesome. How'd you actually get off into ECW?
That tattoo says pain. That tattoo says pain. By the way, that was for you. That's just for you.
Sweet. Well, actually, no. So you was first in WCW, right? Like you was talking about Dusty Rhodes and everything about that earlier.
I wrestled for the Global Wrestling Federation in Texas before I went to WCW.
Yeah, well, that's what I was talking about. Yes, yeah. Okay,
I was there for the very beginning of that company. I was there sitting. Joe Pedicino, who ran the GWF, I was there for the beginning of the company. And when he brought out the costume, well, this is going to be the Patriot. He's going to be our big star. And this guy sitting next to me, Del Wilkes, he's going to be the Patriot. We're going to make him our big hero. You know, when I looked around the room, I saw, you know, Exotic Adrian Street. I saw Del Wilkes, who became the Patriot. There was, you know, who else was there? The Hustler, Rip Rogers, a lot of old school Texas guys, Gary Young, Brian Diaz, Kerry Garvin, and we all thought that this was going to be maybe a contender to WCW because we were on ESPN every day at 4 o'clock. So, unfortunately, Global went by the way of any other wrestling promotion that tried to upstart. It just couldn't compete with the monster and the money and the juggernaut that is behind WWF and at the time Ted Turner. You know, money creates everything. Money rules the world. Wu-Tang Clan put it the best. Cash rules everything. You know, so if you don't have the money, you can't play the game. And he tried, and then when Joe Pedicino left, the company was taken over, and General Skandar Akbar came in to run the company. And then you saw guys like Marcus Bagwell, who was the handsome stranger, come in. Raven, who was the Palm Beach heartthrob, Scotty Anthony or whatever. Raven and I have known, and by the way, that gym in Baltimore, Raven was there. Scott Anthony, Scott Levy was there training with us at that gym. That's how long I've known him. I've known him since I was 16 years old, so we go way back. But the lineage is, from Global, I went to WCW, filled in for One Man Gang, did that thing, and then ended up in ECW. I met Paul Heyman while in WCW. He was managing the Dangerous Alliance.
Bro, you mentioned about money. I figured we'll jump around back and forth. Al Snow had a interview where he said that, well, basically, when it comes down to WrestleMania 3, everybody would go on and say that Ricky Steamboat, you know, and Macho Man's match was the best match on the card. Well, Al Snow was coming from the perspective of making money, put asses in the seats, that it was the best match on the card was Hulk and Andre. Are your opinions of that, is that pretty much the same, or what would you say?
Here's the thing. The best worked match on the show was Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage.
Yes.
What sold the tickets
But
was
yeah, Al Snow was coming down for the part. He's like, "What is it all about? Isn't it about making money and put asses in the
right.
seats?"
Yes, that's
And
what
that's
it's all
yeah,
about.
yeah.
Here's the thing.
Everybody came that night to see Hulk and Andre,
Yeah.
but they got
As
an
a
excellent
wrestler-
show.
As a wrestler, Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage, they know in their hearts they stole the show. They had the best match in front of those 93,000 people, so then no one will ever take that away from them. But Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant also know in their hearts that they put an ant every 18 inches in that Silver Dome, and they drew the money. And in the bottom line is that's what it's all about, because back then, even to this today, if there's nobody watching, nobody's paying, and that means nobody's paying us. So the reality is, you want to draw the people into the arena. Now, once they're in the arena, then it's up to the wrestlers to decide amongst themselves how hard they want to work to put on a great show. And each night, I think there's a one-upsmanship among the guys to see who can have the best match. But there is no doubt at WrestleMania 3, the money was generated from, the Hulk Hogan gimmick going against the Andre the Giant, who, to be quite honest, Andre was already way past his prime, and they were holding him up on stilts basically to get through that match. Had that match been done 15 years earlier, that could have been the best match on the show. But Andre was in no condition to be in there doing that. And I give Hogan a lot of credit for making Andre look good, and I give Andre credit for going in there and doing what he did, because I don't think people give Hogan enough credit for carrying that match. Because if you remember that match, there was a good 3-minute bear hug spot where, Andre the Giant just held Hogan in a bear hug. You can't do a 3-minute bear hug spot on pay-per-view anymore. You get booed out of the building. But the believability of Hulk Hogan and the way he was selling made that possible. So I would agree 100% with Al Snow in the fact that WrestleMania 3 was all about Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. But from a worker-wrestler point of view, without a question, Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage stole the show as far as a wrestling point of view.
Yeah, I remember seeing old videos of Andre doing a pedigree and stuff like that, way back in the day, when he was in his prime. He used to be able to do a drop kick,
Andre would do monkey flips, all kind of stuff. But you got to remember that in the 60s and 70s, before that giantism disease really took a hold of him, once he stopped growing this way, he started growing this way, and he just kept getting bigger and bigger, and he couldn't support himself. His joints were breaking down, his ankles, his knees, his hips. So, great credit for all that he did, but the fact of the matter is, he was way past his prime at WrestleMania 3, so what they got out of him at WrestleMania 3 was absolutely tremendous.
Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
Yes, absolutely did. When I was a youngster, like I said, I started wrestling when I was 16, but between the ages of 13 and 16, always was at the wrestling events when WWF came to Baltimore. Myself and my buddy Dave, we'd get there early, and we made friends with the ring crew guys. Now, here's the funny part. You heard that whole story about that sex scandal with that guy Mel Phillips liking the boys and the child molesting and all that. I'm sure you're familiar with that story.
Yeah.
That's all true. That's 100% true. I witnessed his eyes. I saw it. That is true. There's no doubt that guy molested young boys. No question about it. I'm not saying allegedly. I saw it with these two eyes. And I was there. That one kid, Tom, whatever it is, Tom Carter, whatever it is, that sued them. I saw it. I saw him there. I saw it happening. So yeah, that stuff went down, dude. And that's the thing, the price that people would pay to be involved and be around wrestlers. It was so huge in the 80s that, Mel Phillips used to say, "Oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. We're just wrestling." No 45-year-old man is in a hotel room bed wrestling with young boys with their shoes off, playing with their feet. That's not wrestling. That's molesting. And I actually saw it happen. So all that scandal shit, yeah, that was true, but, you know, that's in the past. And for those people that were scarred emotionally and physically and molested, I think it's a shame that maybe they weren't given the justice they deserved, or maybe they got the justice they deserved. But, you know, that is the machine of big business. It keeps moving on, you know, and it was a wacky time back then, man. The 80s, for all intents and purposes, were a wacky time for everything. Music, movies, wrestling. So, you know, that was part for the course. It just so happened that wrestling, you were able to slip under the radar because it wasn't taken as serious as, you know, football, baseball, or even music. You know, the athletes in wrestling weren't held as accountable for their actions.
Excuse me. All right. So you got into ECW in '93.
Yeah.
93,
94. It was still Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Eastern
back then.
Championship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did it? I forget his name. Wasn't it ran by somebody else at the time? Who was it? Not Ty Gordon, but not who helped Ty Gordon? Eddie Graham. Not Eddie Graham.
Oh, no, not at all. What happened was Joe Goodhart ran Tri-State Wrestling, which became, you know, once they left, Todd Gordon started ECW, but you're probably thinking about Eddie Gilbert when he came in.
Gilbert, yeah, I'm sorry. I couldn't. That name was there, but it wasn't clicking for me, man. It was there.
Yeah. You can't forget Hyatt and Hot Stuff Incorporated,
Hot
man.
Stuff, Eddie Gilbert, yeah, man.
You know, I have to tell you a funny Eddie Gilbert story.
Go ahead. I love one.
When I was wrestling in the USWA in Memphis, you know, the Mid-South territory, we had a match. It was Axel and Ian Rotten, the Bad Breed, versus Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert and Too Sexy Brian Christopher, which, you know, Brian Christopher, Grandmaster Sexay, Jerry Lawler's son, right?
Yeah.
So in Nashville, the locker rooms are on separate ends of the building. You don't talk to each other like, you know, everyone says, oh, those guys are back there rehearsing and talking and all that stuff. Well, in Nashville, the good guys are on one side of the building, the bad guys are on the other side of the building. So the referees go between the locker rooms and say, okay, here's the finish, here's this, here's what we're going to do, and everything else is called in the ring. So here's the funny Eddie Gilbert story. We're the main event, Axel and Ian Rotten versus Eddie Gilbert and Brian Christopher. We come to the ring, I start the match, Eddie starts the match, we lock up with one another, he says, hi, my name is Eddie Gilbert, nice to meet you, push me off. Boom, and I threw him off, and that's how I met Eddie Gilbert. In the ring. And we clicked. We had a great match that night, I recall. But
what was the match?
That was great. In Mid-South in Memphis, a guy that looked like me with a mohawk back then and tattoos and piercings in your face and just, you didn't fit in Memphis and Nashville and Jonesboro.
Yeah.
People would look at me at the Steak and Shake, the Chinese buffet, the rest stop, the grocery store, you know, anywhere, because they would be like, what the hell was that? You know, because people just didn't look like that, you know, unless you were an entertainer. So they knew I was somebody, but they didn't know who I was. And
rocker or something.
Right. Are you in a band? Are you on TV? But I'll tell you what, in Memphis, if you're on that Saturday morning wrestling, you are the biggest star in Memphis, because that television show, as a shoot, used to get higher ratings at the time than Seinfeld and the highest rated primetime shows. Our Saturday morning wrestling would blow it away. So after being there about a month, I couldn't go anywhere in Memphis. People knew who Axel Rotten was, all the wrestlers. A guy who used to be there for many years, Reggie B. Fine was his name. He was big, tall, African-American guy, wore a hat, kind of did like a pimp gimmick. And he kind of took me under his wing and goes, Axel, I can get you a free meal in anywhere in this town. All you got to do is come hang out with Reggie. So I drive around. He go, pull into the Holiday Inn. I said, man, I'm staying over here at the Admiral Bimbo Inn on Union Avenue. He goes, pull into the Holiday Inn. We pull into the Holiday Inn. We get out. We walk in. We go to the restaurant. Everyone's like, Reggie's here. Reggie. Oh, he's got another wrestler with him. We go in. We'd sit down. We'd eat for free, whatever we wanted. So it was a classic time back then. And then in Memphis, in that territory, God forbid if the bad guys and the good guys are seen together. And Jerry Lawler and especially Brian Christopher hated the fact that myself and Ian, the Bad Breed, and the Headbangers were there at the time. We were wrestling each other. It was like the Bad Breed versus the Headbangers, but the Headbangers were called the Spiders back then, and they wore masks. So we're like, yeah, well, the Rottens are hanging out with the Spiders, and like, what I said to Brian Christopher, I said, what the hell does it matter? They wear masks. No one knows who they are. They could be the Road Crew. Here we found out what the real heat was. The real problem was we were stealing the show every night because we were wrestling hard-hitting northern-style wrestling, whereas down there the wrestling style is slower and the little guys always throw a punch and the big guys always bump. Well, we didn't do that. We actually came hard at each other, and we were doing Frankensteiners and stuff off the top rope. I remember in Louisville one night, put Ian on the top rope, and Chaz, Headbanger, Mosh, came up and gave him a Frankensteiner off the top rope. But that was the finish, 1, 2, 3. We came back. Burt Prentice, I don't know if you know who that is, Christopher Love. Burt Prentice was going, oh my God, what was that move you guys did? The people went crazy. And do it again tomorrow, And those guys were so into the good guy versus bad guy. Always Jerry Lawler, in the end, pulls the strap and makes a comeback. They weren't used to the stuff we were doing. So we kind of we got over really big, but also got a lot of heat for getting over. And, that's something that happens in the business because as soon as you get over, the guy that you're more over than gets pissed off. And if he's the boss, you're really in trouble.
Especially if it's a worker who is the boss.
You find yourself in a lose-leave town match, and guess what? You're leaving town. And that's what happened. So, great memories.
Jerry, do you have any good stories of Jerry you can share with us real quick? Or
I wrestled Jerry Lawler
just
about
a funny
30
one or anything.
Jerry Lawler is without question one of the greatest all-time workers in this business. I'm not going to talk about anything that doesn't happen within the scope of the wrestling ring. I'm not going to talk about
man.
life. I'm not going to talk about him as a man. I'm going to talk about being in the ring with him. Being in the ring with Jerry Lawler is like sitting in a Lexus, the top-of-the-line Lexus, on cruise control, and it takes you exactly where you need to go, and you don't need to touch anything. All you have to do is sit in the car for the ride, and that's what wrestling Jerry Lawler is. If you get in the ring with him, he will guarantee you're having a good match because he's just that good.
Yeah. I remember, it was maybe a couple years on Raw, they gave him like a title shot, like on a TLC match or something like that. I mean, everybody was hoping that he would win, like all the fans, everything. They would have loved to him just have that world title, just for that one time. He was a good worker. Here's the thing about wrestling. Sometimes, you don't get what the fans don't always get what they want. That's what keeps them coming back. Yeah, true that. All right, let's go ahead and jump off in ECW a little bit, man. While we're So, I'm guessing you said Paul knew you from the Dangerous Alliance in WCW. So, how'd you actually get called into ECW? When Paul took over, he had you in mind, or was it?
It was real simple. The day before Paul took over, it's all very, linear. It's all very, cosmic the way it happened, because the day before Paul took over in ECW, we had him booked on a show in Maryland to work for us. And when he saw Ian and I together as a gimmick, he goes, man, you guys come up to Philly tomorrow. I got an idea for you guys. We didn't know what it was. We just said, fuck it, we're going to show up. We showed up. Unfortunately, I was hurt and I couldn't wrestle, but Ian worked. But from that day on, we were full-time ECW. It was not a question of, are we going to be on the show? Pardon me. Because Paul did things a little different. Back then, if you worked the show, you'd say, hey, am I booked on the show? Am I booked on the show? You'd always have to ask the promoter. Paul said to me, he said, if ECW is running a show, you're on the show. He said, you don't have to ask, you don't have to just show up, you're booked. And it was a given, it was understood, and that's how easy it was. And from that day on, we took off in ECW. Back then it was Eastern Championship Wrestling. We would wrestle Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond, or Tony Stetson and Johnny Hotbody, or we would wrestle like Rockin' Rebel and Hack Myers. Then finally we actually, before ECW exploded, Public Enemy against Bad Breed was a big deal. I mean, we put a lot of asses and a lot of seats in the ECW arena a lot of times before, the big explosion. I'm talking in late 93, early 94. We noticed the difference to where there was like just chairs around the ring, then there were chairs around the ring and bleachers, and then there were, and it culminated in a match where we did a baseball bat match, not barbed wire. It was just Public Enemy against Bad Breed. First team to get the pinfall gets the use of the baseball bat. And that was one of the biggest crowds to date to that point in ECW. So, I can honestly say that, Axel Rotten and Ian Rotten versus Public Enemy put asses in the seats early on in ECW. So it was one of those things that before we actually knew what ECW was going to be, that was what ECW was. Because at that point, I need to tell you this. I started the exact same day as Taz, Tommy Dreamer. All those guys were on the same show. We all started at the same time. And they weren't what they became to be. They were just guys that, to be honest, Tommy couldn't get over a lick in Philadelphia until he started really getting his ass kicked. And then Tommy became like the heart of ECW. It was like, this
was
guy...
that Singapore King match right around that time?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you about that night. That night when, you're talking about the time when he had to let the Sandman cane him 10 times?
Yeah.
I was there, and I'm going to tell you what. Tommy Dreamer took a legit ass whipping with that stick. I mean, it's horrendous. It ranks right up there with anything real in this world that I've ever seen. And when Tommy came back to the dressing room, his lips were busted. He had whelps on his face. He had whelps on his back. Tears were in his eyes. And the first thing he said was, how was it? I mean, and I was like, that's the first thing he said to me. He said, he said things that, I said, my God, Tommy, I said, Jesus Christ, unbelievable. And that's when I kind of knew at that point that Dreamer had what it took to I didn't know. See, here's the thing. I can say I knew Dreamer had what it takes to be in ECW, but I didn't know what it takes to be in ECW yet because we were building as we went. So if that was what they were looking for, whether he wanted to do it or not, he had it. And I'll tell you what, man, that was a beating, a legitimate beating, and that kid took it. I say kid, we're the same age. He just took that beating like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I know it hurt. I could tell it hurt. But I'll tell you what, that got Tommy Dreamer respect in Philadelphia.
I never remember watching that, and it looked like he got his ass whooped, basically, like Sandman gave it to him. Was it just Sandman always just kind of a little bit too drunk and just didn't care when he swung the cane, or was he careful when he did it, like, your opinion?
Sandman cares. He's not...
that's what I'm asking.
He's not a callous, uncaring person. He's actually very intelligent and very well spoken, very well read. But he's so good as the Sandman, you believe that he's just a knockdown, fall down, drunk. There is methods to his madness, and sometimes it got taken a little too far. But when he had it reined in perfectly and he knew what he was doing, his stuff was impeccable. The people loved it.
Imagine you took some cane shots. How did they feel?
Sure. There were times when I didn't care. You're talking to a guy that, I mean, look at me. I mean, if you can see
Trust me. Yeah,
the barbed wire scars on my arm and all that jazz, obviously, you know, I'm not afraid to go out there
You've been through some shit.
Yeah, I've been caned. I got caned in the face one time right across here. And I remember coming back from the dressing room being so pissed, and I went to Paulie. I said, if you ever put me in a match with that motherfucker again, I'm going to beat his ass legitimately. But that was just the anger talking.
In the heat of the moment.
Yeah, and then when I settled down, I was like, you know what? It happens. Move on. And you know, I've been caned probably 1,000 times, you know, over the course of 8 years.
Alright, so you showed the scars on your arms. Let's go to the Tope Death Match. But first, how is Ian Rodden doing nowadays? I know he has some health issues at the moment. Can you speak about that?
Well, all I can say is what I know is I talked to him via text the other day. We haven't spoke personally about it, but apparently he was diagnosed with some sort of gastric cancer, and he told me via text that he has to go through chemo and he will beat it. The doctor said he will. And, you know, I'm going to say this right here on YouTube. Ian Rotten, a lot of people, when you say his name, it's polarizing. Either you love him or you hate him or you just don't give a shit about him. I have the distinction of having all three of those things rolled into one, because I know the man that is John Williams, who was before all this stuff happened, who cared more about wrestling more than anything. I knew he cared so much. He wanted to be involved in the wrestling business so bad. His heart is huge when it comes to being a wrestler. He was a great friend. But somewhere along the way, we grew apart, and the wrestling business changed us, and we're almost like brothers as a shoot. We're estranged in a way, but when someone in your family, even if you don't talk to them, Pain, for example, say you have a brother you haven't talked to in 10 years, if you hear that he has cancer, you're going to reach out, if you have any kind of heart in your body, and say, hey, man, I just want to let you know, whatever has happened in life, you know, this, in wrestling, this is real life, and I'm praying for you, and I want you to do well. And that's where I'm at with it. You know, if Ian were to call me, I would gladly accept the call. If he had texted me, I would gladly return the text. I don't wish cancer or illness on anyone. I have this little Bell's palsy stuff is nothing compared to that type of thing. My grandmother passed away from cancer, and I had to watch her die every day of her life. And I don't wish that type of pain on anyone. So I hope he beats it. I know he'll beat it, because the motherfucker's tough.
Yeah, man. We have a good YouTube friend of ours that's actually going through cancer right now as well, and like we held a charity live stream for him, Smash Back at Cancer and everything, bro. And he actually got some good news that he's supposed to be going through some surgery and everything, and it should be hopefully looking on good for him, bro, and everything.
Let me just say this real quick, and this is something I'll say 100% I'm behind. Cancer research, if you can do anything to help in any minor way, any form of cancer, breast cancer, testicular cancer, lung cancer, you know, I don't care if you're a fan of Lance Armstrong or not a fan of Lance Armstrong. He has a great foundation. Breast cancer, my sister's a big supporter of, you know, fundraisers, donations, things like that. Lung cancer is near and dear to my heart. That sounds kind of funny. Lung cancer is near and dear to my heart. But it is because my grandmother passed away from it, and I see the destruction that it can cause. So people, if you have the opportunity, and these are tough economic times, but if you can donate a little bit of money to cancer research, or a little bit of time to help people that need it in cancer rehabilitation, it all matters. And that's my soapbox, and now we can go back to talking about wrestling.
Yeah, man. Let's say we did a 24-hour straight live stream and raised a little bit of money. Well, actually, my friends held it. I just was there a little bit here and there. You know, I wasn't staying for 24 hours. But
hey,
all right, man.
You did your part, my man. You did your part.
Oh yeah, man. Hey, they raised their goal. It was in pounds or euros, so I forget exactly the money. I'm down here, but they did raise their goal or whatever. But like, so the Tai Death Match, how did it actually come about? Who came up with the match? Like, is it actually true that the match kind of came from an idea from Bloodsport?
I think the movie was Kickboxer. I think is where it was.
It was still Jean-Claude Van Damme, man, wasn't it?
I believe it was. It was. I have to give full disclosure. That was Ian's idea. We came out of the barbed wire baseball bat match, which was the most gruesome thing. I'm going to go record with this. They called it in the Forever Hardcore documentary. They called it the Summer of Violence. They said when Axl and Ian Rotten started doing barbed wire baseball bat matches, the Tai Death matches, that's when the national press started noticing ECW. We are the ones that brought the national press because of the craziness we were doing. There were shows at the time called Hard Copy and PM Magazine. They wanted to see that crazy stuff, and that's the stuff that Ian and I were doing with wrapping baseball bats and barbed wire and actually hitting each other with them, you know, and bleeding all over the place. After we did that, Paul was like, "Oh my God, that was tremendous. That was the best thing I'd ever seen. Now, how can you top it?" You know, and Ian was on the phone with me, and he goes, "Hey, man, I got an idea. What about we do that deal that was in that movie, the kickboxing thing, where they dip their hands in glue and then dip them in glass, and they just punch each other?" I said, "Okay." And that's how it came about, that organically, that easy. It was, you know, and Paul said, "Do whatever you want." So that's what we decided to do, and we did the Tai Death Match, which... Here we are in 2013. That match happened in 1995, and to this day, not one day goes by that I don't get asked a question about it. And what's happening is that match is taking on a life of its own and becoming, it's becoming actually a part of wrestling history, if you think about it, because people who are 40, who are there live, are showing it to their kids, you know, who are showing it to their friends, who are showing it to their buddies. I have people as young as 10, 12 coming up to me going, "You were in the hands glass match. That was crazy. My dad showed that to me." So that match seems like it'll live on forever. And it has become a part of wrestling history. And it was something that we just did by accident, and it became an incredible, larger-than-life experience.
Do you remember how the backstage area was once y'all two made it back there? Like a MASH unit. It was like a MASH unit. There were a couple guys that were kind of like standoffish, like, "Oh man, that was dumb." But the most of them like, "Oh my God, are you all right? Jesus Christ," because it looked so gory. They didn't know where the blood was coming from because it was all over our arms, our chest, back of our head. Now, here's another thing I'm going to let you know for historical significance. That night was the first time ever thumbtacks were introduced into a wrestling match in ECW. Axl Rotten and Ian Rotten, first time ever to do thumbtacks. We were the ones that did it. First guys to ever do barbed wire baseball bat, this guy. First guy to ever do broken glass, this guy. So a lot of things that I don't get credit for because other guys became the face of the company. I was the guy that kind of did the heavy lifting, that brought the extreme to extreme, and then other guys just kind of came in and rode the wave. Didn't you and him actually have a Tai Death Match too at I forget what organization was it.
Yeah, we had a hardcore. It was just Hardcore Homecoming, the Shane Douglas reunion show in 2005. We did another one. It was really big. I'm told from everyone that it was the best match on the show, and they actually made T-shirts up for it and everything. But it was just they billed it as Tai Death Match 2, and Yeah, it was big. It was good. It was the semi-main event of the card, so it was good.
How were them shows? The ones that Shane Douglas ran.
They were basically just to put money in Shane Douglas's pocket.
Yeah.
I think just kind of like, you know, his new Extreme Rising, hardcore, whatever thing. He says he's one of the boys, and Shane was one of the boys, but he's basically just, you know, now doing what he's becoming a caricature of what he once was, and is trying to put money in his own pocket. I don't belittle him for it. I mean, if you can get
make some money, but yeah.
Yes, if you can get a group of your friends that are either smart enough or dumb enough to put up money for you to run a wrestling show and you can reap profits from it, that doesn't make you a bad guy. That makes you a pro wrestler. So, you know,
as long as you pay all y'all guys and everything, man.
That's one thing I'm going to say. I never got a bounce check from Shane Douglas, although it was probably
what about
a couple
Paul
hundred.
Heyman?
It was probably a couple less than it should have been, but I never got a bounce check from him.
Yeah. All right. But back in ECW, you actually had Rob Van Dam's first match. Am I correct? When
yes,
he came over. Could you speak about that? Just like how was he nervous? The feelings about it? Just go through the match, anything like that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. Sabu came up to me and he said, "Axel, you're gonna wrestle my friend Van Dam. He's scared shitless. Just take care of him." You know. And I was like, "All right, come here." I knew who he was by name only, but I knew him as Robbie V, and he always had these rosy red cheeks. I introduced myself. "Hi, Axel Rod." Back at the time, there were two rings in the arena, one outside for the show and a little one off to the side. We stretched, and so I took Rob over to the other ring and said, "What do you like to do? What do you do?" He said, "Well, I like to do this, I like to do this, I like to do that, and I like to do this." I said, "Okay, we'll get all of that in." I said, "I'll make sure you get all of that." And the reality is, and I love Rob. I still communicate with Van Dam to this day. We'll tweet back and forth with one another, and every time we see each other, it's a hug and a hello. Rob's a great guy, but he was scared out of his mind. That first night in the ECW arena, if you go back and watch the tape, or the DVD, you know, the one-of-a-kind Rob Van Dam, his eyes are huge, you know what I mean? And the reality is, if you listen to the crowd's chanting, "Fuck him up, Axel, kick his ass, Axel," nobody thought this guy had a chance, and that's what I was trying to build. They thought there was just this guy coming in here, I was going to kick his ass. And I said to Rob, "Rob, what's your finish?" He said, "Split-legged moonsault." He goes, "But I don't think that's enough to beat you. I should do this is ECW. I said, "Rob, you're going on what you think ECW is." I said, "I know what ECW is. Your finish is a split-legged moonsault. If you're going to pin me, you're going to pin me with your finish." Because that shocked everybody, you know, because I was kicking his ass, pummeling him. You know, he shoots me into the buckle, bam, move, power slam down, split-leg moonsault, 1, 2, just at 3, I got my shoulder out, but it was a legit 3 count. He beat me. I wasn't trying to stiff him, but I got all his spots in. You notice he got his big 5-star frog splash in, but I kicked out. You know, he got the big high yacht kick off the top rope. He did a flying senton. He got all his moves in, but he made me look great too, because my clothesline was really over. Everybody knew when I hit you with a clothesline, I took your head off, and Rob took one of them spinning 360 bumps for me, and I got a standing ovation off of that clothesline, and that was all Van Dam. All I did was hit him, and he just did a whoop-de-doo flip. And to this day, I want to make sure this gets out there on YouTube. There are certain guys that I love being in the ring with. Tracy Smothers, Chris Candido, God rest his soul, he won't be here anymore. Sabu, Rob Van Dam, Lance Storm, the Dudleys, or Bully Ray and Devon. Anytime I'm in the ring with those combination of guys, great match. Always a good match. I've never had, I don't think, and New Jack. When we do the magic that happens when New Jack gets involved, it's electric. It's something that when that music's playing and you're out there, you can't help but be pumped up. And people always criticize me for not being able to be a wrestler or criticize Jack for not being able to wrestle. Jack's a good wrestler. Jack can work if he wants to work. I can work if I want to work. But that's what we were told to do. And when he came out and saved us, when it was Balls and Axel versus the Dudleys, and you heard that boom, 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 and the place just got electric. You know, I got goosebumps right
man.
now.
Yeah, man. I love the fact that the music played the whole time he's whooping your ass, too.
But, look, I took a lot of those ass whippings in the early days.
Yeah, I meant just, in particular, but yeah.
But it was fun to be on the side of giving that ass whipping because those people were so behind Jack, and Jack every time would turn it up. Man, it started out with just, a hockey stick and a trash can. Then it became a vacuum cleaner, a golf club. I'll tell you another little secret. That head that Al Snow carries around was supposed to be a weapon for New Jack, but Al Snow took it out of the trash can. So there's something I bet you didn't know. We used everything under God's green earth, including a double-edged dildo in that ring. And I remember. No, I'm just gonna say. Let me finish that segment. Those guys, look, Tracy Smothers, Chris Candido, Rob Van Dam, Sabu, New Jack, Balls Mahoney, the Dudleys, Lance Storm. Any time we got together, or I could say I got together with any combination of those guys, I felt comfortable and always trusted and had a great match with all of those guys. It was just unbelievable.
Bro, let's talk about New Jack for a second. First off, when he did come to the ring, did y'all have any idea of the weapons he was going to have in his trash can or whatever? Because I remember just him seeing, him having, a Super Nintendo, me being a gamer, I remember him hitting somebody with that one day. I was like, what the fuck? That was awesome.
I'll tell you, one time in Scranton, Pennsylvania, he hit me with a speaking spell, C is for cow. And it took, 13 staples to close my head that night. But sometimes we'd walk through and say, let's get a preview of what I called it the plunder, because Dusty Rhodes said, that's plunder, baby. I said, let's see what the plunder is tonight. And I'd look, and it was always better when we knew that he was coming to save us, because most of the plunder was going to be on the Dudleys, so we'd look and see what was
Carino's.
Yeah.
I remember Carino saying, that they would fight over who would take, the soft thing or whatever. Ooh, trash can lid, let me take that or whatever. I remember him saying that in one interview or something or another. But, well, I didn't care. I look at it this way. I never fought over taking the soft stuff because I trusted New Jack. I've been in the ring with him, it had to be at least 500 times, or not more. And, I trust him explicitly. He's been nothing but a true pro with me. He is a badass. He is a tough guy. He is all those things that people say he is. He's tough. He's mean, but he's a professional. I've never disrespected the man, and I won't disrespect him because he's always worked with me professionally, and we've always had hell of a matches. So when I hear these people talk shit about him, that must be somebody I don't know, because the guy even my partner, Balls Mahoney, that's not the New Jack that I know. The New Jack that I know is a badass, hardcore wrestler that goes out there, does his job with me, and we've done business, and I've always will and always would do that. And we've also had great times hanging out together before and after the shows. Just tons of fun moments, laughing and partying, and we got tattoos together. I mean, I just look at him as one of the guys in this business that for 20 years, or at least 10 years that we were in ECW together, I can say he was always top notch and a true friend to me. I mean, New Jack, Devon, and Axel in the car together, riding to go get tattoos. I mean, that's think about it. That's the combination of, for 2 years, what topped ECW. The Dudleys versus Balls and Axel with the New Jack run-in. All three of us in the car together going to get a tattoo. I mean, that's how crazy it was. I mean, it was just great times in the ring. There were a lot of times that I got hit with shit that hurt. I got hit with a golf club that bruised my rib cage and all. But you know what? On the big things, Jack took care of me on everything. I took care of him. Very rarely did I ever
think that New Jack hurt me or I hurt New Jack on purpose, because I never did. I know he never hurt me on purpose. So we always had a great working relationship. That's why when I hear guys talking shit about him, I kind of like sit back and go, I never experienced that. So it's like, it's hard for me to grasp it, because I've seen it, but I've never been a part of it. And that's just the wide, wacky world that is wrestling, because there's so many personalities involved.
Let's see, kind of cleared it up a little bit, but there was a rumor that you want to fight New Jack or vice versa or whatever. Do you want to just clear that out the air right now? I'm about to say. Shit, huh?
You know, I do not want to fight New Jack. Let me repeat that. I do not want to fight New Jack. There was some things that got twisted that went around the Balls Mahoney shoot interview that I think people said I said some things I didn't say, and then a couple months ago people were offering me offers to do interviews, and there was a guy that I wanted to kick his ass, but I wasn't going to say his name until I said it on the shoot interview. And everyone started throwing together that it was New Jack, and I'm like, why would I want to pick a fight with New Jack? I've never had a problem with the man, and out of the clear blue sky, I'm going to pick a fight with New Jack. Yeah. First of all, I'm not stupid. All right? I respect him, and I've seen what he's done, and though we have been friends and have never had a problem, I guarantee you if we were going to fight, he wouldn't treat me nice just because we never had a fight. He'd do what he does. But no, without question, people have misconstrued and said, and that's why I don't like the internet. That's the one thing. If you think I have a problem with you, just come to me and ask me. I know you get hey, sorry about that. I was getting a little.
It's all good.
The fact remains, people that want to get a hold of me can get a hold of me and ask me that question. I don't have to hide. I'm not hiding at all. But again, to answer your question, absolutely not. I have no problem with New Jack. Never had a problem with New Jack. Even when New Jack was having his problem with my tag team partner, I stayed out of it. That's two grown men talking amongst themselves, not me. I had nothing to do with it.
Let's say, so that shoot interview that them two did together with the kayfabe commentators, if I'm not mistaken, it was like a dark place and then two in the chair. That was our shoot?
RF video. It was RF video.
Shoot?
I don't know because I wasn't there and I wasn't a part of it. Now, here's what I think some of that might.
And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It seemed like a little bit work too, but then again, it's wrestling, so
I didn't watch it.
I don't know.
Here's where I think some of that that fight New Jack thing came involved, because I called RF video and said, "Hey, can I get involved in this somehow, just to be like a neutral party? You know, to sit there and be like, you know." But then I realized the thing that New Jack was talking about, I wasn't there for. There was something that happened in Florida, so I couldn't be a part of it. So that was it. That was my only interaction that could have anyone ever thought that Axel Rotten wants to fight New Jack, because Axel Rotten does not want to fight New Jack. I consider him a friend. I've always considered him a friend. And today is September 12th, 2013. As far as I know, New Jack is still my friend, and he'll be a valued friend, because we've done battles together that are phenomenal, and they will be forever phenomenal.
I always enjoy watching it. Like you said, goosebumps when you're just talking about him in the ring. Definitely.
I just got him. Just thinking
about the game. Yeah, man. Let's talk about you and Balls. How did actually y'all two become a tag team? I know y'all are, the hardcore chair swinging freaks, man. Y'all used to smash some people with them chairs, bro. I know that. Yeah. Vicious at sometimes, man.
Well, the thing is, mutual friend was Chris Candido. Balls and Candido and I had been friends, again, like I said, since I was like 16, because those two were in Jersey doing the same thing I was doing in Baltimore, trying to get involved in any way they could in professional wrestling. So our paths crossed at a young age. And Candido went to Paul and said, He was like, Jesus Christ, Paulie, Axel's so over, Bowles is so over, but you don't have him doing anything. Put them together. You know, and he put us together. And the matches we had with the FBI, man, the crowd was electric. They'd go nuts. And then when they moved us, I'll tell you what, this is a little scene match. It's Balls and Axel versus Chris Candido and Lance Storm versus Doug Furnace and Phil LaFon from the ECW arena. If you can get that match, watch that match. It's a three-way dance, and it is without a doubt one of the best wrestling matches that ECW had up until that point. And I say wrestling match because there was no garbage. It was all in the ring. There was a little outside the ring skirmishing, but it was all in the ring wrestling. Chris decided to put us together, and it was magic in a bottle. We just melded together. The people loved us. There's no greater feeling when you go out there and you throw a punch, they go Balls. I throw a punch, they go Axel. Balls, Axel. That even happened when we got our WWE tryout. Pat Patterson said, "Don't worry if you go out there and the fans don't know who you are." And we're like, we're in New Jersey, bitch. We're in the ECW backyard. When we went out there, they already had signs that said Balls and Axel rule and all that shit. So when we got out there doing our tryout match, they're chanting Balls, Axel, Balls. Now, I'm going to give you another a lesson in the wrestling business. That's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is you're already over. They don't have to put no money into you. The bad thing is you're already over, and they don't have to put any money into you because they didn't make you. If they didn't make you, they can't break you. They didn't have the power to tell me what to do. I could just walk the fuck out, and that's what I did. I didn't give a shit.
I definitely remember seeing you and him in a match on WWE. How was that feeling actually out there in front of that crowd on that stage? Or was it still just a...
It's great being... look, wrestling, I love being in the ring, and I love wrestling. So, if the crowd's good and it's 200 people, that's awesome. But if the crowd's good and it's 20,000 people, that's even better. And that night in East Rutherford, New Jersey, in front of 20,000 people chanting our name, you know, I'm going to say this on record too, so everyone knows. I did everything I wanted to do in professional wrestling. Now, there's a difference of making it, and there's a difference of making it and staying there. I made it. I made everything I wanted to do. The only thing I didn't do was I was never on WrestleMania. But other than that, I've done everything else. There's an action figure of me. I'm in a video game. Companies made T-shirts of me to sell. I've been in the main event segments on Monday Night Raw. I've been in the main event segments on Friday Night SmackDown. I've been on main event segments and pay-per-views. What else is there for me to do other than have, 20-year WWE career? Now, I have longevity. I'm still here. I'm not gone. A lot of people wrote me off years ago as, Axel's going to overdose and die. Axel's still here and getting back into better physical condition. But my mind works like this. And I tell you right now, if I could get the opportunity to have the chance to be a part of a creative team, I guarantee you I have ideas and launching points for great storylines, great angles. But, I have no regrets when I look back at what I accomplished because I accomplished everything.
Due to some technical difficulties, we had to end the interview right there, but we should be coming back sooner or later with a part 2. Me and him are gonna get together again. If you got any questions or comments or anything for the man, go ahead and leave them down there in the comment section. I will get to and ask him. Once again, thank you very much, Axel, for doing this with me.